For thumb CMC flexion, you'll have the patient sitting in a chair with their arm resting on the mat table as so, and their forearm is supinated, the wrist is in neutral, and the palm is up. So the axis will go on the palmar side of the CMC joint, and then the proximal arm will be along the midline of the radius, so palpating for that, and then the distal arm is going to be along the first metacarpal. And then I'm noting that we're starting at 30 degrees. And then go ahead. For active range of motion, you're going to bring your thumb across your palm like this. And we're at 2 degrees. So the difference between 30 and 2 will be 28. And then for passive range of motion, I'm just going to push into end range. And we're at 10 degrees. So the difference between the 30 degrees initially and the 10 will be 40 degrees. For thumb CMC extension, the patient position and the landmarks are the same. So again, starting at 30 degrees. And then for active range of motion, you're going to bring the thumb away from your palm. So the difference between 30 and the measurement now, which is 38, is 8 degrees. And then for passive range of motion, just pushing into end range. And we're at 46. So the difference between 30 and 46 is 16 degrees. For thumb CMC abduction, the patient will be seated in a chair with their arm resting on the table like so. The forearm and the wrist are both in neutral, so their thumb is up. The axis will be on the lateral aspect of the radial styloid. And then the proximal arm will be along the second metacarpal, and the distal arm will be along the first metacarpal. So okay. So for active range of motion, you're going to bring your thumb away from your palm. And we're at 30 degrees, and then for passive range of motion, pulling into end range, which is at 34 degrees. So I'll place the axis on the dorsal side of your MCP joint, and the stable arm is going to go along the metacarpal, which you'll palpate. And then I'm going to go ahead and hold it stable here, and then the distal arm is going to follow the dorsal side of the proximal phalanx. So go ahead and make a fist, and I'll get an active range of motion measurement. And I got 85, and then to get passive range of motion, I'm going to push further. Now I'm getting 100. So to get MCP finger extension, the axis will go on the dorsal side of your MCP joint, and the proximal arm will go parallel to the metacarpal, and then the distal arm is going to follow the dorsal side of the proximal phalanx. So go ahead and extend your fingers like this. So for active range of motion, it's 34, and then for passive range, I'm going to push you into end range. Oops, sorry. And it's 42. So for MCP finger abduction, the axis will go on the dorsal side of the MCP joint, and the proximal arm will go along the metacarpal, which you will palpate. And then the distal arm is going to follow the proximal phalanx. So go ahead and spread your fingers active range of motion, I got 5, and then for passive range, I'll bring you into end range, which is 10. For PIP flexion, the axis will go on the dorsal side of the PIP joint, and the proximal arm will be on the dorsal side of the proximal phalanx. And then the distal arm will be along the middle phalanx. So go ahead and curl your finger like this. So for active range of motion, I'm getting 100, and for passive range of motion, you'll push in end range. I got to 106. For DIP finger flexion, you're going to put your axis on the dorsal side of the DIP joint, and the proximal arm will be on the dorsal side of the middle phalanx. And then the distal arm is going to follow the dorsal side of the distal phalanx. So go ahead and curl your finger for me. And for active range of motion, it is at 68, and then for passive, push into end range, and it is at 84. For DIP extension, the landmarks are the same, so go ahead and place the goniometer, and go ahead and straighten your finger as much as you can. And it's right a little bit past 0, so about at 2 degrees, and then for passive, I'm going to just push in the end range, and it gets to 5 degrees.